We have a huge update in the Ellen Greenberg case, as the pathologist who conducted her autopsy and initially ruled her death as a homicide before switching his ruling to a suicide has now come out saying he was wrong. Her death was not a suicide. On January 26, 2011, 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg was found dead by her fiancé Sam Goldberg when he returned to their apartment in Philadelphia. He told police that he was unable to get into the apartment because the swing bar lock was in use, but when he eventually forced his way into the residence, he discovered Ellen dead with a 10-inch knife in her chest, and the apartment covered in blood. Ellen died from 20 stab wounds to the chest, abdomen, head, and the back of her neck. Initially, Ellen's death was ruled a homicide, with the pathologist noting the many stab wounds as well as bruises in various stages of healing. Writing that she was stabbed by another person, her death was ruled by the pathologist a homicide. But despite this ruling, the Philadelphia police continued to treat the death as a suicide from the beginning, with investigators so convinced that Ellen had taken her own life that they released the crime scene without calling CSU. By the time investigators returned, the apartment had been professionally cleaned, so any potential evidence was gone. But the police remained sure that Ellen had taken her own life, and eventually the pathologist changed his ruling to saying that her cause of death was suicide. This ruling came in part because only her DNA was found on the knife and her clothing, and the fact that the swing lock was still in place when her fiance got to the apartment. There was no sign of forced entry or anything else disturbed in the apartment, so all of this combined led them to change their ruling. But Ellen's parents have always maintained the belief that their daughter was murdered and that the investigation was mishandled. They have fought for 14 years to get justice for their daughter. There have been multiple lawsuits and an online petition that drew in more than 160,000 signatures. Finally, in August, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed to hear Ellen's parents' argument over her manner of death ruling. And over the weekend, Ellen's parents resolved their claims against Dr. Marlon Osborne, the pathologist who performed Ellen's autopsy. And as part of the settlement agreement, Osborne is now saying in a sworn statement that he should not have ruled Ellen Greenberg's death a suicide. Osborne said that after considering new information in the case, he no longer believes that Ellen Greenberg took her own life. He said, "I am now aware that information exists which draws into question, for example, whether Ellen's fiance was witnessed entering the apartment before placing the 911 call, whether the door was forced open as reported, whether Ellen's body was moved by someone else inside the apartment, and more." So he said, based on my consideration of the new information brought to my attention after he left his job in Philadelphia, along with my original autopsy findings and information considered while I was actively involved in Ellen's case, it is my professional opinion Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide.